Let me tell you something that most people find deeply uncomfortable. The universe does not care about you. It does not care about me. It does not have a plan, a preference, or a purpose. And I want to show you why that is the most astonishing, thrilling, and honestly liberating fact in all of physics. Now, I know what you are thinking. You look around at this world, at the staggering precision of it all, the way an electron carries a charge that is matched almost laughably well by a proton, the way gravity is tuned so that stars can burn for billions of years instead of collapsing immediately, the way carbon atoms have this peculiar resonance energy that lets them form inside stellar furnaces and later become the backbone of every living thing on Earth. You look at all of that and your gut says, somebody had to set all of that up. Somebody had to measure it out and dial the knobs and write the blueprint. That feeling is completely natural. It is also completely wrong. And I am going to show you precisely why, not by appealing to faith in the opposite direction, but by following the mathematics straight down into the cold, unforgiving machinery of reality. Think about a bucket of water left outside on a winter night. A perfectly ordinary bucket, nothing special about it, just water molecules bumping into each other, vibrating with thermal energy, completely disordered. Then the temperature drops, and something astonishing happens. Out of that chaotic, mindless, violently churning mess, a snowflake emerges. And not just any snowflake, a structure of such breathtaking geometric precision and six-fold symmetry that if you show it to someone who has never seen ice before, they will ask you who carved it. They will assume there must have been a tiny, invisible sculptor working inside that bucket, measuring angles, cutting edges, enforcing the symmetry one molecule at a time. But no sculptor exists. The water does not know what a snowflake is. The individual molecules do not have a plan. What they have is something far more powerful than a plan. They have mathematical laws, the laws of molecular bonding, of hydrogen bridge structures, of thermodynamic phase transitions. And those laws, applied relentlessly and without mercy to every single molecule simultaneously, produce the snowflake as an absolute inevitability. The complexity does not come from design, it emerges from law. And that distinction, that one simple distinction between designed complexity and emergent complexity, is the key to understanding the entire universe. Because the universe is the bucket, and we are the snowflake. And I want to show you exactly what the physical laws are that play the role of molecular bonding at the scale of all of reality. Let us start at the very beginning, and I mean the very beginning, a place most people wave their hands at because it seems too mysterious to think about carefully. Empty space, the void, nothing. Most people assume that before the universe existed, there was simply nothing, and that therefore something must have intervened to create it. But here is the problem. A true, perfect, absolute nothing is not just a place without matter. It is a mathematical impossibility. And I do not mean that loosely. I mean that quantum mechanics, our most precisely tested theory of physical reality, one that has been confirmed to something like 12 decimal places of accuracy, that theory makes a sharp, definite, mathematical statement about the nature of empty space. And that statement is that empty space cannot be truly empty. Here is why. In quantum mechanics, there is a principle, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and it says that you cannot simultaneously know both the energy of a system and the time at which that energy is measured with unlimited precision. The more precisely you nail down one, the more fundamentally uncertain the other becomes. This is not a measurement problem. It is not about our instruments being imperfect. It is a statement about the physical structure of reality. Now apply that to empty space. If space were truly empty, it would have perfectly zero energy at all times. But that word perfectly is forbidden. It is not just difficult to achieve. It is not just practically unattainable. It is ruled out by mathematics. Space, therefore, cannot sit quietly at zero energy. It must fluctuate. It must perpetually buzz and ripple with energy that briefly borrows itself into existence in the form of particle-antiparticle pairs, little whispers of matter and antimatter that pop into being and annihilate back into nothing in intervals of time so short they border on meaninglessness. These are called virtual particles, and before you dismiss them as theoretical abstractions, let me tell you that we can measure their effects. One of the most remarkable experiments in the history of physics involves taking two perfectly flat metal plates and placing them extremely close together in a vacuum, with essentially nothing between them. Classical physics says nothing should happen. There is nothing there, so there is nothing to push the plates. But quantum mechanics says the vacuum is full of these fluctuating fields, and the geometry of the plates actually restricts which fluctuations can exist in the tiny gap between them, while the space outside the plates has no such restriction. The result is that there are more virtual particle fluctuations pushing on the outer faces of the plates than between them, and the plates are measurably, demonstrably pushed together. We call this the Casimir effect, and it is a direct physical measurement of the energy content of empty space. The vacuum is not empty, it is a violently seething ocean of quantum possibility. Now, if the vacuum of empty space is already doing that, if it is already a churning ocean of fluctuating energy even when there is nothing there, then the question of how something came from nothing takes on an entirely different character. The universe did not have to be switched on by an external hand. A quantum fluctuation in a pre-existing vacuum, or even in the quantum geometry of space itself before space as we know it existed, can cascade under the right conditions into an exponential expansion of energy. We call this inflation. The mathematics of inflation, developed by Alan Guth and refined over decades, shows that a tiny patch of space with a specific energy configuration can expand by an absolutely ludicrous factor in a fraction of a second, producing in that brief violence all of the matter and energy we observe in our visible universe, not because something lit the fuse, but because the mathematics of quantum fields operating on the geometry of space inevitably, relentlessly produces exactly this outcome under certain conditions. The universe begins not because of a creator, but because absolute stillness is forbidden. But now I have to address the most compelling argument that people use when they look at the universe and feel that something must have designed it. And that argument is fine-tuning. It goes like this. Look at the constants of nature, the strength of the electromagnetic force, the mass of the electron, the cosmological constant. These numbers appear to be calibrated with terrifying precision. If the cosmological constant, the energy density of empty space, were even slightly larger, the universe would have expanded so rapidly after the Big Bang that matter could never have clumped together into galaxies and stars. If the strong nuclear force were a few percent weaker, atomic nuclei could not hold together, and there would be no atoms at all. If gravity were stronger, stars would burn through their fuel in thousands of years instead of billions, far too fast for planets to form and life to emerge. The numbers seem almost impossibly well chosen, and the conclusion many people jump to is that someone chose them. But this conclusion makes a hidden assumption, and that assumption is that there is only one universe, and therefore the numbers had to be right in this one. Remove that assumption, and the argument collapses completely. String theory, our most ambitious attempt to unify quantum mechanics with gravity, makes a surprising prediction. The mathematics of string theory does not produce a single unique universe with a fixed set of physical laws. It produces an absolutely staggering number of possible universes, each with its own values of the fundamental constants, its own particle content, its own dimensionality, its own physics. The current estimates suggest something on the order of 10 raised to the power of 500 distinct possible configurations, a number so large it is essentially meaningless to try to visualize. What this means is that the physical laws of our universe are not uniquely determined. They are one solution among an almost incomprehensibly vast landscape of possible solutions. Now combine that with inflation. Inflation, once it starts, generically does not stop everywhere at once. Different regions of inflating space will drop out of inflation at different times, and with different configurations, producing what cosmologists call a multiverse. A fractal structure of pocket universes, each with different physical laws bubbling up out of an eternal inflationary background. If that picture is correct, and there are serious theoretical reasons to think it might be, then the question of why our universe has its particular constants is answered in the same way we answer why we live on the surface of the Earth rather than in the crushing pressures of its iron core. We live where the conditions allow us to live. Of the vast multitude of universes with different physical constants, only the ones with constants that allow stars and planets and chemistry and biology will ever be observed by anyone at all. We are not in a fine-tuned universe because someone tuned it. We are in one of the universes where the numbers happen to fall in the range that permits us to exist. And by simple logic, that is the only kind of universe we could ever find ourselves in. This is called the anthropic principle, and it is not a cop-out. It is a straightforward consequence of probability applied to an ensemble of universes. The ice crystal does not have tuned molecular angles because a sculptor measured them. It has those angles because only the configurations that satisfy the constraints of hydrogen bonding are stable, and the ones that are not stable never persist long enough to be observed. Now, I want to talk about something that touches me personally as a physicist, because it gets at why complexity exists at all, why the universe did not just remain a smooth, featureless, maximally disordered soup of radiation. The answer comes from thermodynamics, and it is one of the most profound and underappreciated ideas in all of science. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that the total entropy of a closed system, its total disorder, always increases over time. Always, without exception. This is not a statistical tendency. It is as close to an absolute law as physics gets. Left to itself, any ordered arrangement will decay into a more disordered one. Ice melts, hot coffee cools, neat piles of sand scatter. And the universe as a whole, over timescales that dwarf anything we can meaningfully imagine, is marching relentlessly toward a state of maximum entropy, maximum disorder, maximum equilibrium. A cold, dark, featureless expanse where nothing happens and nothing can happen ever. But here is what most people miss. We are nowhere near equilibrium yet. The universe was born in a state of extraordinarily low entropy. Enormous amounts of energy were concentrated in hot, dense regions. And as that energy flows from high concentration regions toward lower concentration regions, driven by the ironclad demand of the second law, the flow does not happen smoothly and featurelessly. It happens through structures, through pipes, through engines. Wherever a steep gradient of energy exists, systems will spontaneously self-organize into configurations that are better at dissipating that energy than a smooth, featureless medium would be. Stars are thermodynamic engines. They form because gravitational collapse concentrates matter, creating a steep energy gradient. And nuclear fusion is an extraordinarily efficient mechanism for converting that concentrated energy into outgoing radiation, streaming entropy into space. Life is a thermodynamic engine of even more breathtaking sophistication. A living cell is an incredibly organized, low-entropy structure, and the naive reading of the second law would suggest that such structure cannot spontaneously arise. But that naive reading ignores the environment. The cell does not increase the total entropy of the universe. Quite the contrary, it accelerates the total entropy increase by consuming energy from the environment and dissipating it as heat at a faster rate than a dead, disordered collection of the same molecules would. Life exists not because it defies thermodynamics. Life exists because it serves thermodynamics. It is a more efficient, dissipative structure than non-life. In some deep sense, the universe builds complexity precisely because complexity burns fuel faster. The great physicist Erwin Schrödinger asked in his brilliant little book, "What is life?" And the answer we now have from thermodynamics and from information theory is almost poetic in its cold precision. Life is matter that has learned to eat entropy gradients. Consciousness is a dissipative process. A human brain, burning glucose at a ferocious rate, is the universe finding a mechanism to accelerate the flow of energy from the concentrated form it exists in food to the diffuse form it exists in body heat. And in the process of doing that, it thinks. It wonders. It asks questions about the nature of reality. The wonder itself is thermodynamically inevitable. This is the truth that I find most staggering. Not that the universe is complex, but that the complexity is not an accident and not a design. It is a mathematical consequence of the drive toward entropy, operating on matter capable of self-organization. The snowflake is complex. The galaxy is complex. The cell is complex. The conscious mind is complex, and in every single case, the complexity is the thermodynamic system finding a more efficient path for energy to flow downhill. Law, not intention. Mathematics, not will. I have spent my life doing physics, and one thing I know with absolute certainty is that the universe is stranger and more magnificent than any of the stories we tell about it. The comfortable story, the one where someone competent and benevolent arranged all the pieces carefully, is actually a rather small and disappointing story when you look at it honestly. It replaces the magnificent, terrifying, self-creating power of quantum fields and thermodynamic flows with something that sounds almost mundane by comparison: a builder who works from a blueprint. The true story is far more violent and far more beautiful. Reality bootstrapped itself out of quantum fluctuation. Space itself crackled into its current form through a phase transition of unspeakable energy. The constants of physics that govern our universe are one draw from a nearly infinite distribution of possible draws, and we observe this particular one for the simple, logical, breathtaking reason that it is the kind of draw in which observers can exist. Stars are temporary hotspots in a universe flowing toward cold death, and life is a clever mechanism the hotspots invented to spread themselves faster. Minds are the universe interrogating its own structure through a thermodynamically convenient arrangement of carbon and water and electrical signal. There is a kind of vertigo that comes with understanding all of this clearly, and I do not want to talk you out of that feeling. That vertigo is appropriate. The universe is genuinely dizzying in its scale and its indifference and its power, but the answer to that vertigo is not to reach for a simpler story. The answer is to let your mind grow large enough to hold the true one, the one written in the language of quantum fields and entropy and probability distributions, a story that required no author because the mathematics itself was the author, and the story it wrote was the only one the mathematics permitted. That is the universe I live in. That is the universe you live in. And if you ask me whether that universe is wonderful, I will tell you that it is the most wonderful thing I have ever had the privilege of spending my life failing to fully understand.